Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Kincardine Mearns Area Committee on the 9th of June 2026. I'll begin with our usual thing. So please note that the public section of the meeting will be recorded and available to view online after the meeting is finished. And can I ask members to activate their cameras where possible, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking. Please do not come in during items unless they invite you to do so. And if members wish to speak on any point, please use the hands up function in Teams. I'll schedule a conflict break at an appropriate point. If anybody needs one earlier, please indicate to me. So we'll start with the settlement. I could ask Gemma to take the roll. Thank you.
Councillor Avenue. Present. Councillor Aitchison.
Present.
Apologies from Councillor Black. Also apologies from Councillor Burnett. Councillor Carney.
Here.
Councillor Carr.
Good morning.
Councillor Dickinson. Present. Councillor Edson. Present. Apologies from Councillor Schmidt. Councillor Sullivan. Yes, can you be intimidated? Councillor Turner.
Present.
And Councillor Victor. Present.
Councillor Sullivan points later will check for which members interest at that time. So if you spot a company, please let me know. So we'll move on to declaration of members' interest. Can I ask if there are any councillors who wish to indicate either transparency statement or interest? Seeing no hands, in which case we'll move on to the policies resolution. Can I ask if, in line with the council's legal duty under section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, whether the committee has agreed that in making decisions we shall have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, harassment and victimisation. We advance equality of opportunity between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and that we will foster relations between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and that where an integrated impact assessment has been provided, we will consider its contents and take those into account when reaching a decision. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to the statement of outstanding business, and if I could hand you into the area manager, Mr. Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, my microphone isn't quite working, so I shall just talk a little bit louder. Very little to update on this. I would say the one item of outstanding business to have an organised, and I believe we will have an invite to an informal session on this issue with regards to roads maintenance on the 23rd of June in a fortnight's time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if there are any questions for Mr. Stephen? Seeing no hands, so thank you very much. We'll move on then to the minute of the meeting of the Kincardine Mearns Area Committee, the 19th of May 2026. Can I ask if members are agreed that this is an accurate record of the meeting, and if not, please indicate. Thank you. I'm seeing no hands, so that is an accurate record of the meeting. I'm going to be moving item 9 up the agenda, and we're going to take item 9 next. That is the closure of Kenneth School statutory consultation report. This is in order to accommodate officer timing for introducing the report. We have Rachel Goldring and Kelly Tennant with us this morning to introduce the report. So if I could hand over to you, Rachel, when you're ready, please begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Today we are presenting a report on the findings of the statutory consultation for the permanent closure of Kenneth School. Councillors are being asked to consider the consultation report provided at Appendix A and provide comments on the officer recommendation at 14.1 of that report, which will then be presented to Education and Children's Services Committee in August 2026. Kenneth School was mothballed in August 2024 and has not been operational since that time. In October 2025, ECS Committee approved the launch of a statutory consultation regarding the closure of the school. This statutory consultation ran from the 12th of January to the 6th of March this year. 2 public meetings were held during the consultation period, one online and one in person. Both meetings were attended by members of the public and Community Council representatives. Both meetings had views expressed for the preference of merging Kinneff School with Cataline School. An online survey was open throughout the consultation period and 18 people chose to take part. The results show that the majority support the closure of Kinneff School and prefer the option to merge with Cataline School. Pupil engagement was also part of the consultation process, with pupils welcoming the prospect of additional pupils from Kinneff to their school. The minutes of the meetings, survey analysis and pupil engagement feedback have been provided in appendices 2 to 6. Following the consultation period, HMIE reviewed the proposal and the educational aspects of the consultation. HM inspectors support the closure and realignment of the catchment area to Cataline School. The full HMIE report has also been provided at Appendix 7. The officer recommendation is to permanently close Kinneff School and merge the catchment area with Cataline School. This will support the views expressed during the consultation and the feedback of the two communities working together, both currently and historically. This aligns with the community council area and also reflects the previous pupil movement from Kinneff School. Your comments today will be taken into consideration at Education and Children's Services Committee on the 27th of August. ECS Committee will then make a recommendation to full council on the 24th of September and a decision will be made whether or not to implement the proposal. Implementation may not proceed until after the government call-in period, which would be in November 2026. Therefore, if this proposal is approved, school transport arrangements will be amended from January 2027. I'm happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction to the report, Rachel, and for clarifying the governance route for this paper. So we are being asked to provide comments to Education and Children's Services Committee. So turning to members, Councillor Carr, George.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I agree with the sentiments in the paper. So thank you, Rachel, for your presentation. Couple of questions was how many children, maybe just missed this in the paper, how many children would be affected, would not be maybe entitled to public transport in Kinneff area, or does it actually encompass all the pupils that reside in Kinneff area were to they all move to Cataline? And the second point was obviously related to Inverbervie and Cataline. Inverbervie's got after school provision, so that was always something that Cataline had sought, and whether this would give an opportunity to put in some sort of provision there. But I agree that Cataline's the right school for these children to be rezoned. So thank you.
Rachel.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the number of children who would be entitled to transport, it would be the vast majority. Some of them are not entitled at the moment because they chose to move to Cataline prior to the school being mothballed. However, if the school is permanently closed, then those ones attending Cataline would then get the transport. Those who wouldn't get transport would be those who have chosen to go to other schools through placing requests already. And so it would be very minimal in terms of that. There may be a very small number who were getting transported to Bervie because they chose Bervie at the point of mothballing, and those arrangements would continue for them. However, I'm not sure of the individual circumstances, so I wouldn't want to comment, but the absolute vast majority of pupils would then get their transport entitlement. In terms of after school provision, that's not something that we provide as a statutory basis. However, we would absolutely welcome anyone who wants to set up a provision, a private company or a community group that wanted to set that up, and support would be available to help them around the governance of that, if that was something that there was a wish to deliver, but it wouldn't be a council delivered provision.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose in the school transport, Rachel, it would be, I'm aware of all the different arrangements that parents have made. However, with the actual physical catchment of the Kinneff area, are there any children that would be within the 2 miles of Kincardine School for the catchment of Kinneff that wouldn't be subject to school transport?
Those who are living in the Kinneff catchment at present, if the decision is made to merge with Kincardine, they would all have, those properties would all have entitlement to transport, because those who are rurally out with Kincardine wouldn't have a safe walking route anyway.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Before I bring you in, Councillor, we had Councillor Sullivan, who's just joined us. So welcome, Councillor Sullivan. Could I just confirm whether or not you have any declarations of interest before I move on?
I don't. Apologies for getting my technology sorted much in advance.
That's all right. Thank you very much. So we are on item 9 because I've taken that at the top of the business after the minute. So this is the Kinneff school closure that we are addressing. Councillor Everson, if I could bring you in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rachel, as well. I mean, I also agree with the recommendation being made in the paper as well to be taken to Education Committee and beyond. And I would like to thank you and the service for all the consultation you did to reach this stage, in particular in the bad weather. I want to be flexible in the bad weather to make sure that all voices were heard at that difficult time of year as well. So really appreciate that. It was good to see the voices of children too, and actually from the culture point of view of our schools, it's actually really good to see the children everywhere, both Fairsley and Catalan, wanting to embrace the children from Kinneff as well. That was really positive response from the young people as well. So to commend them in addition. I think the questions that Councillor Carr asked about transport are actually really important, because that was one of the areas of real concern for the parents, and it may be helpful if that answer you gave could be set out to parents as well, so that it was clear to everybody what was going to happen if the governance process results in the closure and moving to Kincardine School as well. That point of clarity is really important. And the other point I just wanted to raise, if the governance process does go the way it seems to be going at the moment, and the school ends up as we think it is, I think working together with the local community about what next in terms of Kinneff School is something that can't start soon enough, actually. And we need to actually have that kind of agreement and discussion. I know the Community Council has an interest in play equipment they bought for Kinneff School, for example, and I think it would be useful to make sure those discussions happen in the earliest possible stage about what could happen to the building. Obviously, that's not part of this decision today. It is something to bear in mind. So thank you for the work involved, and I support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. We can certainly take all of those points forward for you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So just to add from my own part, because I did attend one of the online meetings during the bad weather, so very aware of what the response was in that meeting and support for rezoning of Kincardine. So very much welcome that decision. Again, I would echo everything that Councillor Everson has just said about the engagement that's taken place here in the process that's been followed. So thank you very much to the service for that. I'm not seeing any further hands. So the request of us this morning was to consider the formal consultation report that was appended to Appendix A regarding the permanent closure of Kinneff School. We are asked to provide comments to Education and Children's Services Committee. I'm hearing us supporting this decision. I'm not hearing any counter voices to that. Welcoming the extensive engagement that's undertaken, and just highlighting some further issues around the future of the building. We had responses to questions relating to after school provision as well. So unless I've missed anything, we'll take those as comments that are going back to ECS, and then onward from there, of course, to full council. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel and Kelly, for being with us this morning to speak to the report.
Thank you.
So we will now move back to the run of the agenda as you were expecting it. So back to item 5, which is the full planning permission for erection of fence. It's a retrospective application at 49 St Michael's Road, Newton Hill, Aberdeenshire. 393RW. We have representatives with us this morning to introduce the report. We'll just give Gregor a moment to get set up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So,
Watching kettle boil. Move the other way.
it's a screen, sorry. This happened. So, cheers, Lawrence. It's nearly there, sorry, if just setting up the screen so I can share the slides and some of the use of these and those. That's okay, no, I think hopefully we've got it now, and apology. Awesome. Great. Yeah, so what we're only single item on the agenda today, filing the application in front of us relates to a property 49 St Michael's Road, Hill. Essentially, the application is a retrospective planning application for the erection of a 1.8 metre boundary fence to the front of the property. The application is in front of us today as there is an objection from the Community Council, and their views are recorded in the reports. Looking at slides, this is the site plan that shows the property location, and ultimately the fence itself is located just in the frontage here. There's a separate red line that delineates, so we'll jump forward a bit there, that delineates the fence to the front of the property towards the public roads, and adjacent to the boundary with the neighbouring property number 47. This is a close-up detailed view of the fence. It's a 1.8 metre. I describe it as a vertical lap-boarded timber fence, and it's obviously finished in grey. We do have some photographs here that show the fence in situ. So the property is in the centre of your screen. The fence on the left-hand side of the property, with trees behind it. And you can see it sits in an area of the frontage of the property, but it doesn't take up the whole frontage. There's still room for parking and an area of garden landscaping as well. Just a slightly more zoomed-in view. And this is a view we have that shows it in conjunction with the neighbouring property, where there is also a fence in situ in a similar manner. So looking at the report, there are no objections from technical consultees, roads development, and no objection in terms of road safety in relation to the proposal. There is, however, an objection from the Community Council that the field fence is ultimately out of keeping with the character of the area, and have raised policy concerns. Also, they have highlighted in the response and reference permit development rights. I would probably address this just to clarify that permit development rights are somewhat different from a planning application. Permit development rights identify development that does not require a planning application. So ultimately, just because something does not meet the terms of permitted development doesn't mean it's unacceptable. It just means you must apply for planning permission. In relation to the specific permit development rights for a fence that fronts a road, primarily the reason for that is in relation to road safety. Higher fences above a metre are more likely to have an impact on things like visibility displays or the road safety. And that is why there's a slightly lower bar in terms of fences, but permitted development in front or in relation to a road. However, the applicant has submitted a planning application in this instance to rectify the retrospective erection of the fence, and it's being assessed under planning policy. I think the report makes it clear that the planning policy is quite broad. There's nothing specifically that relates to fences and roads, but there's general planning considerations about amenity and road safety impacts. And ultimately, in this instance, the planning service considers that the fence is fairly low scale. It doesn't take up the whole frontage. It's set back from the roadway. There are no road safety concerns raised, and ultimately the recommendation is to grant planning permission in this instance. We do have another number of slides. So this is a view from Google. I was trying to get as wide a view as possible, but I'm afraid this is the best we can do. Is a little better than the photograph already had, just to show the context. But we do have photographs just in the general area to show you the context of this part of Newton Hill. In fact, there are a variation of boundary treatments, whether that be hedges or fences, such as in the centre of the slide here. On the left-hand side of this slide, there is a mixture within the wider area. I would accept that in the immediate vicinity of this property, the frontages are quite open, certainly across the roads, and there's perhaps less fences in the immediate vicinity, but they are characteristic of Newton Hill and of the area. And the planning service sees no reason to refuse the fence in this instance, and therefore the recommendation as per section 10 of the report is to grant. Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Very much for the introduction, Gregor. Can I ask if there are any questions for Gregor? Thank you. Councillor Turner, Alan.
Yeah, apologies. I'm going to compare your slides. Okay, so the one you've got up there just now, it shows that this is the key. Focus on what is the fence we see on the slide there. Okay, if you go back, I think it's either one or two slides.
So we're in the wrong way, I think.
Yeah, so what I also see is a similar fence to the other side of that property, you know, in front of, you know, for clarity, in front of the silver van. Is that in the same applicant?
Yes, that's the same property.
But we're only concerned with the one that's on the left. What would be, dare I say, the left-hand side of that photograph?
Yeah, this is where your development rights come into play in terms of in front of the property, in front of the front elevation and proximity of the road. So yes, we're only considering the fence on the left-hand side.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's it. It was just for confirmation that I think the Community Council did highlight 1 metre. Obviously, we've explained why this is not necessarily relevant, but I suppose it's for information. So is it normally 1 metre? Some kind of
So in terms of permitted development and the proximity, sorry, I'm not using my mic, which is watched out because it's not working anyway. So continue to speak like essentially, permit development rights identify the criteria, so we do not have to apply for planning permission specifically. So development is deemed to be accepted without being considered as a planning application. And it's a circumstance such as this, and on road frontages and to the front of properties, it's generally 1 metre in height. And again, it is because primarily of road safety, but also an amenity to a certain extent. I dare say that the consideration of this proposal may be different. The whole of the frontage of the property was encapsulated by a 1.8 metre high fence. That may have a greater impact on the character of the area, but that's not what we're looking at. We're assessing what is a section of the front garden, if you like, of the property that is enclosed by the fence, and is therefore deemed to be acceptable when considered against planning policy, which would be the consideration when you are moving away from permitted development rights.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further hands, so just to double check, does anybody have any questions for Gregor? No. So can I ask you, do we have enough information to take a decision? Yes, I'm seeing nodding heads and no hands on that point. So we are being asked to grant full planning permission. Can I ask if we are agreed, or whether there's any motion to counter that? Agreed. Everybody's agreed. In which case we are granting full planning permission for the erection of a fence at 49th Street, St Michael's Road, Newton Hill, Aberdeen. Thank you very much for attending this morning. Okay, so we'll move swiftly on to item 6, which is the Kincardine Mearns Area Committee Budget 2026-27. And Gemma, are you going to introduce the report? It's going to be Tim. So Stephen will introduce the report for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that there is a reduced amount available for grants this financial year, with a total of £17,800 available. Officers are recommending that £15,000 be available for grants from this point onwards, with 2,800 being reserved until December for communities wishing to create local place plans, community action plans, or projects associated with existing or developing place plans. In the event that this budget, this is the 2,800, is not used by December, it will then be made available for general grants. Officers have referred to the ongoing place plans being created on an academy network basis in section 3.4. However, it's envisaged that funds will be prioritised for local place plans, and ideally this should probably, with hindsight, should have been reflected in this paragraph. We are suggesting that funding applications are considered by committee on 3 occasions, at committees in September, December and late January, with a view to ensuring officer time is used efficiently and allows qualitative judgments to be made in the event of pressure on funds. It's expected that we'll be reviewing this at the end of the financial year to see how that works. In the event of time-critical applications that need to be considered outwith of the 3 meetings that we're proposing, there is the ability for the area manager to make a delegated decision subject to consultation with the chair and vice chair. And in those circumstances, we would also engage with all members to get a view if it relates to their ward. The specific criteria and the new proposed maximum limit, £2,000, are included in the appendices. I'm aware that we've had some informal discussions on this, so I shall stop my introduction there and take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I ask if there are any questions at this point for Mr. Steve? So I'm seeing no hands, that there are no questions for Tim. Did you have anything further than the information, any further points that you wish to make before I move to the recommendations?
Chair, I think if everyone's happy and no further questions, we're very happy to progress that from this point onwards. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take these recommendations. Let's say Councillor Alison.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a question, but just a comment that obviously the amount of money we have to give out now is much reduced. And just awareness of the burden on our local community groups for completing applications and putting money in and going through the administrative process. And just a plea that we try and keep everything proportionate in terms of the volunteers and support of our volunteers. Obviously, it's really important that we have our criteria and we meet our criteria. But I think we've also got to be cognizant of the work involved for our volunteers across our communities to produce the information required. So an effective balance, I think, is required in that as we move forward.
Thank you. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, yes, I think this is a very positive reminder for officers, and I think it is something that we're aware of. I like to believe we've always been proportionate with grants, but I take on board the point that with the pressure on funds and the reducing maximum amounts, we need to bring that to the fore. So yes, is the short answer to your question. I think we will be proportionate in terms of what we expect from people. And as ever, I think, the officers within the area team will try and use their common sense, if you excuse that expression, to try and help people and steer people in the right direction.
With that reassurance then, I'll take us back to the recommendations. We'll take these in turn. So we're asked to note that the funding available for area community budget for 26-27 is £17,800. So that's noted. And then 2, to agree that £15,000 of funding be allocated, first using the Kincardine and Mearns community planning priorities, second with a maximum grant of £2,000, and third with 50% match funding requirement. Are we agreed? Thank you. And that third recommendation is to allocate £2,800 towards the delivery of place plans, local place plans and community action plans in Kincardine and Mearns, subject to any funds remaining on the 31st of December 26 being returned to the open fund for community applications. All agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to item 7, which is the Kincardine and Mearns Community Council grants for 26-27. Again, Tim, you're going to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I shall be very brief on this, in that this report outlines the proposed breakdown of budget allocations for Kincardine and Mearns community councils. Proposals relate to each community council having a base budget of £600 and the subsequent pro rata allocation based on population To make up the remainder of the budget, this is outlined in Appendix 1. Committee may wish to note that £1,500 has been taken from the total Aberdeenshire budget prior to allocation to pay for community event for council, which is expected later on in the year. I wasn't going to say anything else. I am aware that a number of members have queried some of the maths in the tables. And I will say that if anyone's wondering how it's possible for the change or population change, that's predominantly due to the maths in that you can get a reduction even though you've an increase in population, simply because you may have dropped a couple of community councils, which will have reduced the budget per community council. So we have been through the maths if anyone has any particular concerns in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, again, can I invite any questions on this paper, Mr. Stephen? Councillor Carr, George.
Thank you. I think in this paper, I'm not really particularly happy with an awful lot of this. I don't agree with some of the monitoring of spending of community councils, because I feel, and I'm picking up from community councils, if there's money left over at the end of the year, that will be taken back to the centre. So there's a big drive in community councils to make sure that everything's spent by the end of the financial year. The range in community councils that we've spoken about already is quite wide. They've got a big remit of activities that they participate in. We used to get, when I was community council secretary, you had the project grant and you had the administration grant, and then it's all wrapped into one, and now we're moving that forward to a completely different platform. So, so community councils are now looking, well, how are we going to use this money? Well, okay, we're going to bring in others out with, and we've got to pay them to do secretarial work, and we've got a treasurer, well, we should be paying them as well. So we're moving from a situation where community councils are essentially a voluntary organisation. It certainly was when I was there. You never look for any remuneration, and now we're moving to a situation where we're forcing the community councils to do that. And I'm not at all happy with this, and I'll just put it on the record to say that I just don't agree with it. Thanks, sure.
Your comments, I'll move to Councillor Alison.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And I suppose my comment is related but different, because obviously over the course of the last year there's been a lot of learning, there's been a lot of fear amongst community councils about what might be expected if they don't spend the money, and lots of pressure on how the money should be spent, and a lot of comments to us as councillors about, is it allowed, is this the right thing we should be spending money on? There's been a lot of, I'd say, fear in terms of management of the money over the year. However, I was actually reassured by paragraph 3.11 in the report. And I think that's taking on board with the experiences and the learning of last year. And there are, as we're moving into place planning, as we're looking at our community councils in a different way, and it does put democracy matters as well, in particular this, and we know our own encouragement of place planning and the engagement we're expecting of our council, our community councils, and the work that's developing as a result of that engagement, which is also being community council led. I think this paragraph 3.11 recognises that. And I would welcome the comments about that serious consideration is required to take into account the diverse range of work being undertaken. I would just urge that serious consideration happens quickly and promptly, and involves discussions as well with community councils. So we do end up in a situation where the money that we are allocating here is spent in the best possible ways through our community councils for the communities they serve. So thank you for 3.11. I think that's an important addition to this paper. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll bring you in, Councillor Turner.
I think I'm going to echo much of the comments that's been said there by Councillor Everson. I accept what Councillor Carr is saying, but I also accept the fact that, you know, we're in a changing environment. Community councils are, as quite rightly Councillor Carr says, volunteers. And, you know, let's be fair, at the range and size, you just look at the populations versus the number of community councils, that they can be, there's vastly different numbers. And it relies on, you know, I dare to say it, volunteer skill set to do certain things. And if that's not necessarily present, whether it be secretarial or even treasurer for that matter, I think it's every right that the community council are actually taking a chat to go out and actually try and get suitable help in order to do these things for their communities. And they provide an absolutely valuable thing for the individual communities. I think also, I'm reassured by a number of the paragraphs in here to do with just how we're actually allocating the money. And at the end of the day, I think it's good that we're still actually able in a position to allocate money. Dare say, I'd love to see more coming to community councils, but at the same time, I accept the fact that we have to have community councils, and anything that we can do to, in some respects, minimise their workload, actually to me would be a benefit. So giving them the money to do it, and not being too difficult and hard on them in some respects to actually account for all of that, dare I say, it is actually a challenge here. I take what Councillor Carr's saying in terms of they've got to have it spent by a certain date. I would ask for a bit of flexibility in some respects as to what will come back, because so many different community councils, they will have different priorities in their own respective areas. But no, I support the report. I support what's the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Comments?
Yeah, it was just sort of agree with Councillor Carr here. I think the community councils I deal with are quite concerned about the restrictions put on how they spend money, because a lot of them use some of that money to do a lot of good and raise funds for different things in the area. And now they're feeling quite restricted as to what they can use the funds for. So I'm wondering if there could be a little bit more flexibility in how they are allowed to spend the money. I know that this is going about because some councils, community councils, were they'll be spending on things that weren't very relevant to the community. But there are circumstances sometimes where the community council are spending money in a good way, and now they're not allowed to. So maybe we should really have a bit more flexibility in how we spend it.
I'll bring you in at the end. That's okay, Tim. And I will come in at this point. My concerns with this paper are simply that over time, whether or not there's enough resource sitting within the area team to support the community councils as anticipated through the direction of travel that's laid out at 3.11. That was a question that I had, and I'll look to you to address if you don't mind in a moment. Tim, I don't personally have an issue with saying that if you're given an administrative grant, the administrative grant is for administrative purposes. I think if a community council raises money over and above that, those funds have been raised against a purpose, and it should be entirely up to the community council how that money is spent. It's not come through us. That's up to the community council to disperse that money according to the purposes for which it was raised. But an administrative grant is an administrative grant, and if we're no longer in project grants, then holding the community council to the purposes of the administrative grant, to me, is not an issue. I think that's right and proper. The question is, if a community councillor is not clear or a treasurer is not clear, then we have within the area team the support that's necessary. It's not us as councillors, it's the area team to speak to whether or not something is or is not appropriate. And they should feel that you're an approachable group to come and ask that question of. So I support the recommendations here. I know how hard our community councils work. I don't believe in making that difficult for them. But I think there is a direction of travel here that is across the piece has to be more of them, and there does need to be appropriate support available to them. And can we resource that to the level that they would need and we would want? So that's where my concern lies. Particularly now, would you rather take all the points at the end?
Happy to wait, Chair.
Yeah, happy to wait. So I'll bring in Councillor Sullivan now.
Press the button. Does the button work? Ah, there we go. Yes, I agree with councillors Victor and judge. I don't think the administration grant in this form is particularly helpful to most communities. They're going to be looking for ways around it, trying to find things that will technically justify. It'd be much better if community councils needed administration grant support, which, I mean, do yours? I don't think any of mine actually need money for administration apart from what the insurance that they have to pay now. It would be better if they just asked for that money rather than having to get some and then give it back. I would actually rather just give them a lump sum and let them spend it on whatever they like. So I don't agree with the recommendations.
Thank you very much. I'll bring you back in, George, if you could keep it brief, please. Jim, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. And in the year, well, comments agree with Councillor Turner and Councillor Victor that we should have greater flexibility for the community councils and how this money is being spent. It's putting quite a lot of pressure on them. And what we're actually seeing is that the council are given the grant to community councils, but they may have a bank balance which is greater than that grant that we are actually allocating. So they've almost got two separate accounts, so they can use what they've already got in their balance to spend on what they like, and then this bit they've got to spend on administration. They've got to account for that at the end of the year. Where I have a problem is that we're not necessarily bringing in new people to provide those functions for the community councils, like treasurers and secretaries. We're actually saying, well, look, if we can't spend this, we'll just start spending it on ourselves to do that work. It's supposed to be it's predominantly in my work where we've got 7 community councils where they all do it predominantly as volunteers, and it's one community council takes on secretarial support, but the rest all do it on a voluntary basis. So that's where I've got a concern with this. I'm not so happy where this sits. Because it's sort of it's micromanaging the community councils, and it's taken away from the voluntary aspect of what a community council is all about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Wendy.
I can speak loud. Yeah, I can understand what can't say. I think it's about unfair. You give the grant and then taking it back if they don't spend it all. I think that grates on me slightly. I know we have to watch what we're doing, what we are doing with money, but be very careful. And I think most community governments are very careful with their money. Some raise money by themselves, and that is good. But others maybe don't have the opportunity to do that. So no, but it's also like problem I have with giving the money that you've given them back. I don't like that bit at all, but and I don't think they will like them.
Thank you for your comments. I'll bring Mr. Stephen in now to address the points that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will take a few minutes, and I might see Gemma would like to add to it, because I know Gemma's often at the sharp end in terms of dealing with community council. But I think starting on the positive, I think I can reassure members that we will continue to be flexible in terms of how we work with community councils, in terms of monitoring their administration grants. I think we do recognise that the complexity of running organisations such as community councils has increased vastly from 10 years ago, both in terms of the range of things they deliver and in terms of the way they operate, and that's sometimes relating to IT. You know, a lot of community councils, as we are having a huge range of costs that relate to PCs, projectors to ensure they can run hybrid meetings and so on. So we're seeing a whole range of different type of costs that we haven't seen before. We do recognise they are taking on a range of roles, and I think when community council work with us, and the vast majority too, we're always through our offices and through people such as Gemma happy to work with community councils not to hasten to say to help them spend their money, but to ensure that their administration grant is used as effectively as possible, and they can do that. The one thing I do have to be clear on is that a number of councillors have realised is that what we are giving them is an administration grant. It isn't a wider general grants pot, and I think there's sometimes some confusion from community councils about the ability to use funds, and there are a small number of community councils that have had positive discussions with us about how they can use those funds for what I would say more general purposes. And in fairness, in those situations, the response has to be is an administration grant. We ultimately would like to assist you. You know, we will help. There's things that you can do to benefit the administration. There's a number of members have highlighted if people want to raise funds for particular projects. It's my view that that will always be a separate pot, and I don't want to lead anyone down an alleyway in terms of suggesting that. So yes, there is flexibility, but we will continue to speak with the community councils, and we recognise the breadth of things that's involved with administration is widening, and by and large, you know, when people work with us, we will help them spend those grants. We will also, and this comes back to the chair's point, in terms of within the area teams, we have a duty to support community council. We're trying to in a range of ways, and one of those supports would be engaging with them at a relatively early stage to talk about administration and how we can help them with any ideas they have in terms of benefiting their administration. That will always be a positive conversation about reducing the workload on them, recognising that administrating a community council is becoming a more complex business, and this hopefully is a very helpful fund in terms of doing that. In terms of the wider question of officer support for community councils, I would like to think that going forward, you know, working with community councils is at the heart of the place-based way of working, and we always recognise that within the area team and within work programmes. I think it's fair to say that officers have a really positive relationship by and large with communities, but with community councils, and I would like to think that we have the resources to continue to do that. The one caveat I will say to that is that we do, as Aberdeenshire Council, need to respect the fact that community councils are autonomous. So I think one caution that all area managers are aware of is we have to understand help in terms of giving them the help they need to operate as a community council without being seen to take over. And actually that can sometimes happen, and that can be a risk. So yes, I think in answer to the chair's question, we are looking forward to continuing to provide that level of support from area teams, and we will do that in a balanced way to make sure they are autonomous from ourselves. Now, if it's okay, Chair, because I see if Jen would like to add anything to that.
Not too much, just I suppose what we're saying here at paragraph 310, 311 and 312 is just about monitoring spending. So actually identifying what it takes in this time period to run a community council for them to do everything they would wish to do, and that includes some of the development work coming down the line. We've already mentioned democracy matters, I think Councillor Levison did. So it's actually just ensuring what we give them that they are, you know, able to spend it for all these other areas as well, and making sure that we know the true cost of running a community council.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really interesting discussion, which I'm sure officers are hearing the heart of the concern that you all have about the impact on our community councils of administration, basically, and I'm sure that that's really through loud and clear. And we've had some reassurances regarding flexibility and so on. So in terms of the report that is before us this morning, though, the recommendations were to note the updates provided within the report, which we'll be doing, and to consider and agree the proposed allocations for Kincardine and Mearns Community Council grants for the period of 1 April 26 to 31 March 27. Are we agreed with those grants? Yes, thank you. Okay then, so we'll move on now to our last paper this morning, which is the Education and Children's Services Year-End Performance Monitoring Report for 25-26. In relation to council priorities, we have with us this morning the Director, Lawrence Finlay. Very warm welcome to you, Lawrence. I'll hand over to you to introduce the report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This report provides the year-end performance overview for ECS in K&M, set in the context of the Council Plan 24 to 29 priorities. So overall performance across the area is strong, with 70% of measures meeting or exceeding target, with a small number identified as areas for further improvement. So the report highlights positive outcomes for children and young people, including very strong attainment in numeracy and literacy, both above local and national comparators, significant improvement in our foundation apprenticeship completion rates, now well above target, and high levels of positive post-school destinations, demonstrating effective pathways beyond school. There's also evidence of continued progress in key areas such as attendance and wider achievements, alongside strong partnership working to support children, young people and their families. At the same time, the report is clear about areas requiring ongoing focus. So that would be particularly participation and membership in our LLA services, where performance remains below target, and early years uptake for eligible 2-year-olds, where numbers have reduced locally and indeed nationally. So in summary, Chair and members, the report demonstrates that Kincardine and Mearns continues to deliver positive outcomes for learners while maintaining a clear focus on targeted improvement and addressing areas of challenge. And I'd be happy to take any questions that members may have, Chair. Thank you.
Very much for the report and the introduction. Lawrence, can I ask, are there any questions for the Director? Councillor Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lawrence. Looking at this report and comparing it with the very positive report we had on LLA at Communities Committee last week, it stands out the areas for improvement in Kincardine and Mearns area compared with what we heard at Communities. So, is there any more specific work we need to do in our area to encourage that we can meet these targets, to encourage people to take part in our facilities that we offer and the activities at those facilities? Because it seems a bit outstep with what was presented last week for the whole of Aberdeenshire, and it would imply to me that we need to do more in this area and have more focus on the facilities we provide. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Everson, and through you, Chair. There are a number of things that we think we need to be doing as a service. So, on our forward planner for this year in LLA, we're developing and anything you can do as members to support this, I think would be fantastic. And I'm sure Alan and the team would be delighted to come back down informally to talk through some of this. But we're developing a sales and retention strategy, which will help hopefully. We want to, one, manage our inquiries better, leading to more conversations turning into sales. Secondly, we want to help us keep members engaged to use their membership, provide tips and incentives, and educate members through personalised programs. So even going for 30 minutes of exercise is still highly beneficial depending on what you're doing. We're trying to understand the reasons for people leaving, for ceasing their membership, and we've done some analysis of this. And typically it's been due to moving house, and then people want to use the gym closest to their home, or inactivity. They're just not using it often enough, and it's linked to a perceived lack of time. We have seen leisure centre membership in Stonehaven growing slightly over the last 12 months following that initial peak from the refurbishment. But overall in K&M there was a 0.2% drop. So one could argue that's negligible, but we don't want to be complacent about it and we want to keep focusing. So hopefully, Councillor Everson, that gives you a sense of some of the things we're doing as a service, and anything you can do as members to support us, we'd be delighted with that. I'll pick that up with Alan though, and we can maybe have a discussion at another point on any specifics members can do to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sufficient reassurance. Yes, thank you. Turning to Councillor Victor, Catherine.
Yeah, my question was really much the same as Councillor Everson's actually. That's what I wanted to know, is whether any plans really doing improve and encourage young people to get into physical activity. Is there anything going on in schools to encourage school children to take part in more activities from an early age? Is that going on as well?
Yeah, that's going on as well, Councillor Victor. And so obviously physical education is a part of the curriculum. All young people are entitled to 2 hours of quality PE per year in the broad general education of their schooling, and in primary schools, and K&M has a 100% success rate with that. So all young people are getting their physical activity. Many schools engage in initiatives such as the Daily Mile, so they go out and walk for a mile at some point in the day. There are a range of clubs and activities. Active Schools is very strong in the K&M area as well, being that bridge between school and community. And of course, we've recently received received investment through Sport Scotland. For Aberdeenshire of £500,000 for the Summer of Sport, tying in with the Olympic Games, the Commonwealth Games coming to Glasgow, and so on. So there are a range of activities planned. So something we're not complacent about, because I think we're all concerned that post-COVID, people have become more attached to their screens than ever before and prefer activities that they can do indoors with a phone or with a device, as opposed to going outside and undertaking physical activity. So I think we're doing all we can to promote active, healthy lifestyles, Councillor Victor. Thank you.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Turner.
Yes, good morning, Lord. Question is to do with the positive post-school destinations. And if I read 2 years worth of figures, what I'm seeing is we're declining, okay, in terms of achieving that, albeit it's not huge numbers. But when I compare it, and it's the bit across the Shire, you describe it, or it's described in the report as we're the 4th highest, okay, in terms of admin area. That can be 3rd lowest, so it's an improvement on the previous. Okay, my whole question is, what are we doing? What are we not doing in K&M versus the areas that are at number 1? Is there a learning that maybe they're doing that we could perhaps bring across into our area? You know, at the end of the day, I read the things that's down as a positive post-school destination, and you'd like to think that figure would almost be 100%. Maybe it is at 96, but to me, that's still not the number I would like. I would like that to be 100. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Turner, and through you, Chair. This is complex, this area, and the picture is being seen across the authority of that overall decline. And we've always had high percentages of young people going into positive destinations across Aberdeenshire, but there is a slight decrease in many of our schools. And I don't think there's anything area specific round about this, but I will give some background that I think will help you understand the figures a bit more. So mainly across Aberdeenshire, the decrease and across the country actually can be attributed to the increasing number of pupils who've struggled to engage with education in schools. Some have barely left home since COVID. We still have those young people in our system. And whilst we're doing all we can to support them to continue with education in some form and even gain some accredited awards, in some cases, they're not in a position from a well-being perspective, particularly a mental health and well-being perspective, to access a positive next step at this stage. There is usually multi-agency support around these young people, but it is an area that we are aware of and we're working to address. And whilst there may be solutions to supporting non-attenders to engage with learning, the social element of presenting in a building and interacting with others can be one of the greatest barriers when they then go on to leave school, which is leading them to struggle to hold down a job or a college place and so on. Susan Smith, head of education in my team, who you know well, does performance reviews every year across all 17 academies. She does them between January and March and looks back at the previous year's attainment, achievement, positive destinations, school improvement planning, and so on. And I tend to go to a number of these. I go to about 3 or 4 every year, but Susan does all 17. And she's gone back through her notes for the Mearns area, and you might find this interesting. When she was at Mearns Academy specifically, the school leadership team spoke about a significant increase in the number of pupils who had planned to take a gap year to travel. Now, that has resulted in those young people not being recorded as having a positive destination, because a gap year is not recorded as a positive destination. But it may be very, very positive and the right thing for that young person to do. Equally, there are also pupils who have moved away out of Scotland in a few cases, and Susan picked those up across the 3 schools in the Mearns area. And again, this results in us, because they were on the roll at the beginning of the year, they then moved out of Scotland. That results in us not having our eyes on them, if you like, with Skills Development Scotland in terms of next steps. What is clear, though, and I hope you find this reassuring, I actually went to the performance review at Portlethen Academy this year. It's one of the ones I did. And I was really heartened that in each and every single school, our school leaders, our head teachers and our deputy heads knew the story that lay behind the percentages. And without exception, they could talk about each and every one of the young people from their school who fell into that category. what they had been doing to try and support this and how closely they were working with Skills Development Scotland in relation to following up these young people. So a lengthy answer there, Councillor Turner, but hopefully one that gives some reassurance that our schools are all over it in terms of the data that lies behind it, and things like gap years, moving out of Scotland and so on, beyond our control, obviously. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Lawrence, for that. A lot more assured. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing your hand as a legacy hand, Councillor Woodcock. Yes. Awesome. I'll bring in Councillor Carr, George.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Lawrence, for the report. I think it's quite encouraging to see the number of volunteers and volunteer hours that have gone up. I mean, that is encouraging. But however, the 20% drop in LLA footfall, I mean, that is probably concerning. That's quite a big jump. And would that be due to cost of living challenges at the moment? I think our staff are excellent in the facilities we have, been in past, that some of the ones in my area, and they are enthusiastic and they have a lot of good ideas. So important to drill down their take on what we could do to improve facilities. Certainly in Inverbervie, I think I was in visiting staff there and really impressed to see the new equipment, and that has also had an impact on membership and activity and footfall. So I think that's a classic example of a wee bit of investment can actually give us a good return on participation. The last point that's got raised was we've got 3 premises of 15% that are in unsatisfactory condition. Mearns LLA facilities. So can you maybe just give us a bit of a rundown on that? When does it become a real challenge if it's unsatisfactory? Where is it starts to really impact upon we might have to close the area of it if it's tight to even meet our legal obligations. So so for those 3 premises, you might like to take some background on that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carr. I was struggling to hear all the comments and questions there, but in terms of those specific facilities, I can ask the team to get some update with you. Obviously, our health and safety requirements will override everything else in terms of how we assess suitability and condition of buildings for use. But I'm happy to ask the team to pick up with that specifically, and we can get a briefing for you on that. You also asked about the cost of living crisis, and was that a factor in the dip we've seen in membership? And I go back to the response I gave to Councillor Everson's question. That hasn't come through in the feedback we've had from those who've left. I'm sure it is a factor, but the reasons that we've been given in the K&M area specifically for ceasing membership has been they've left the area, they've moved house, or they realise they haven't used it in some time, so they've decided just to give up their membership. So those would be the key reasons, Councillor Carr.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'm coming back to Councillor Everson.
Yeah. Thank you for listening back in, Chair. I had to say something in response to your comment, Lawrence, in response to Councillor Turner about the gap year and not being able to be direct destination. Been reflecting on that, and I think this is something that requires a wider conversation, not necessarily in our council, but beyond that even nationally, about how we look at these things. If we think of the skills we are trying to promote, the core skills we're developing in our young people in terms of confidence, resilience and things like that, a gap year would seem to be an extension of those very skills that we value when they're younger in the school, and things that they do develop when they're on a gap year, and especially if they're going abroad to do that. So I would just suggest that there's a wider conversation required there, and would suggest that it needs to be taken up somewhere.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Everson. And as a languages graduate, you would expect me to agree. I took myself off for a year as a teenager and lived in France for a year and worked, and the skills that I developed that year stay with me to this day. So I'm on the same page as you. A conversation I'm happy to pick up with my colleagues at Skills Development Scotland, with whom I meet regularly, both with my Aberdeenshire hat on and with my national hat on as ADES president. I'm happy to pick that up. Thank you.
Lawrence, I'll just pick up on that point. As some of you have had a gap here, I couldn't agree more with the comments that have just been made. And I think I've made this comment virtually every year when we get the positive destinations report. To my mind, a positive destination is a positive destination when it matches the aspiration of the individual at the centre of it. So if I had what you would call a positive destination by some standards sitting out there, but it was not what I was aiming at, then okay, on paper it's a positive destination, but I've not got to where I was seeking to get. So who gets to define my positive destination? Because that gap year, that place at university, that decision to pursue something vocational, but after a gap year or doing something else, maybe a further apprenticeship or whatever it might be, all of that, to my mind, is what should really be defining whether or not we're succeeding, because that's at the heart of the questions. Are we succeeding for our young people? Are they leaving us ready to engage the world as they wish to engage it with the skills and that they need to go where they want to go? So I mean, I don't need to stay anymore. You don't need to come back on that, but I suppose that is my feeling always when I'm looking at positive destination and numbers. I'm thinking, well, but was it what they wanted? You know, they may be going on to do A, B, and C, but was that what they were really aiming at, and did they get where they were aiming? And that's really only they can define that or say that. I am really pleased to hear you've given a lot of response in terms of the LRA memberships, and I am reassured by that. I'm really pleased to hear that we're doing some follow-up work to try and drill deeper into understanding why people might be leaving. So that's something that I've picked up. In terms of our foundation apprenticeship performance, which is, you know, we were saying that the completions are up, and that's really, really welcome. I am concerned as to what's going to happen with FAs over time, because they're such a valuable part of the curriculum today, really helping to cater for everybody, to close the attainment gap where it exists. And I am concerned about any threat to that programme. And welcome many comments that you might have on that point in particular. And then just one final thing, which is there any further explanation that you can give around any drop in retake up of eligible twos? Is there information you have around what's driving that as well? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'll begin with your last point on the eligible 2-year-old uptake in ELCs. Over the past year, there's been a noticeable decline in the number of 2-year-olds accessing ELC and K&M, mirroring a broader downward trend across Aberdeenshire. According to the CAI data, which is the NHS birth data, the number of children in the relevant age group residing within the K&M school catchment area, so this is from July last year, dropped from 406 in 2023-24 to 346 in 25-26. So that likely accounts for a significant proportion or portion of the decrease in uptake. And it's important to note there is specific criteria for accessing 2-year-old provision. And recent data received from DWP would suggest that 42 of these families, so approximately 12% of these families, may be eligible. So further analysis has been conducted in partnership with the Scottish Improvement Service, and that's enhanced both the accuracy of our data and our understanding of local participation. So among families in K&M who applied for the 25-26 period, 2 declined a place due to personal reasons unrelated to travel or location, and 2 did not meet the eligibility criteria. And the remaining children have all been allocated places, with 4 new applications currently being processed, spread across a combination of local authority and funded provider settings. I guess regarding provider availability, of the 12 local authority ELC settings, 7 in K&M, 7 are presently registered to offer places for 2-year-olds. So 2 additional settings are also currently under review by the Care Inspectorate to accept 2-year-olds, and the remaining 3 are progressing through the early stages of registration. So we hope and we anticipate that these settings will be ready to offer places soon, and that will further expand the variety of opportunities for eligible children and their parents. And all 41 funded providers operating in K&M are registered to accommodate 2-year-olds. So in terms of improvement work, we'll continue to work alongside our key partners, so that's the NHS, social work, DWP, and the improvement service to strengthen referral pathways, enhance data quality, and support the continued expansion of that particular provision. And we're also undertaking ongoing efforts to boost awareness and uptake among those families who might be eligible. There can be some stigma attached to it, so important that we destigmatise it as much as possible. Aberdeenshire's recent initiatives with regards to the eligible 2-year-olds have been recognised nationally by the Improvement Service as an example of good practice. So that's positive that we're on the right trajectory, and hopefully we can continue to see a good practice in terms of raising awareness and an improving uptake. In terms of foundation apprenticeships, I would share your concerns. Funding for foundation apprenticeships has shifted in line with the Tertiary Education Act, recently passed through Parliament, from Skills Development Scotland to the Scottish Funding Council. And of course, the Scottish Funding Council traditionally haven't funded local authority programmes. We've had letters of assurance from the Minister for Further and Higher Education, indicating that there is no risk to the programme. However, the funding that we receive has not increased since 2019 when we started the programme, and so the money is not stretching as far as it used to. We are working really hard with Paul McCarry and his team to look at other funding avenues, but I think this is part of a broader national conversation we need to have about work-based and experiential learning as part of the senior phase of our curriculum, because the model isn't sustainable. So every year for the past 7 years, we've gone into this crossing our fingers, hoping we can pull it off, and we've managed to pull it off. For me, that's no way longer term strategically and sustainably to go about our business. So I would share your concerns. What I would say by way of reassurance is that we have the right people round about it. Andrew Ritchie is at that table nationally. I'm at the table nationally. I know Jim is doing the same as chief exec. Our chair, Councillor Keating, and opposition spokesperson, Councillor McAllister, have written to the minister. So we've all the right people making all the right noises to the right people nationally to try and get some positive, more sustainable funding for foundation apprenticeships in future. Sorry, that was a lengthy answer, Councillor Dickinson. Hopefully that's helpful.
No, very helpful, and thank you for a very detailed response regarding the eligible twos as well. No, I appreciate that, and really hope that all the effort going in behind foundation apprenticeships is successful in making that a sustainable programme going forward. I'm not seeing any further hands, so just remains for me to thank you very much for attending this morning, for introducing the report and your very fulsome responses to our questions, Lawrence. Please, I'm sure, pass back our thanks to everybody who's working hard across the many teams delivering the successful performance that we are seeing here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd said we'd take a comfort break at some point. We've not done that, so my apologies to everybody. But I can confirm that the meeting has now concluded. I thank you for your attendance and participation today. Wish you a good day. Thank you.